This is The Light Inside. I'm Jeffrey Biesecker. Reintegration. It allows us to gently reclaim and include the full range of our parts, subpersonas, and roles we inhabit, without collapsing into overperformance or self-erasure, so our identity can be expressed with coherence, flexibility, and relational depth. At its core, all human behavior is performative at its underlying essential nature. Yet at times, dissonance and discomfort triggers the need to overperform these essential aspects. This episode, we explore how unresolved biopsychological data, shaped by grief, early attachment injuries, and chronic caregiver stress, fragments identity and narrows emotional expression, and how embodied compassion and relational attunement restore internal coherence. With PhD communication scholar and trauma-informed somatic practitioner Tena. Today we ask, what happens when, as practitioners and clients, we release the need to overperform for safety and instead allow compassion to surface what's been quietly carrying the load, opening the door to fuller presence, deeper connection, and a more integrated expression of who we are. Tune in to find out how when we return to The Light Inside. When it comes to mobile service providers, many of the big-name networks leave a bad taste in your mouth with their high-rate plans, extra fees, and hidden costs or expenses. Mint Mobile is a new flavor of mobile network service, sharing all the same reliable features of the big-name brands, yet at a fraction of the cost. I recently made the change to Mint Mobile, and I can't believe the monthly savings, allowing me to put more money in my pocket for all of the things which truly light me up inside. Making the switch to Mint Mobile is easy. Hosted on the T-Mobile 5G network, Mint gives you premium wireless service on the nation's largest 5G network with bulk savings on flexible plan options. Mint offers 3, 6, and 12-month plans, and the more months you buy, the more you save. Plus, you can keep your current number or change to a new one if you like, and all of your contacts, apps, and photos will seamlessly and effortlessly follow you to your new low-cost Mint provider. Did I mention the best part? You keep more money in your pocket, and with Mint's referral plan, you can rescue more friends from big wireless bills while earning up to $90 for each referral. For therapeutic practitioners, moment-to-moment contact invites a shift from advancing the narrative to establishing relational pacing, where integration becomes possible not through insight alone, but through sustained presence with what is emerging in the body, the role, or the relational field. So often in our work, we move too quickly along the narrative timeline, trying to make meaning, assess costs, or arrive at insight before we've made relational contact with what's actually present in the body. This is the moment where reintegration either deepens or gets bypassed. Here's the inquiry I want to hold as we transition today. What shifts when we slow the story down just enough to stay in contact with the sensation, the role, or the part that's trying to be heard, rather than rushing to move beyond it? Let's stay with that as we continue today. We welcome our guest today, Tena. Tena, thanks for joining us today, first and foremost. I truly am excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm so happy to have another deep and fun conversation with you, and I'm so excited.
Our therapeutic community is excited to explore the role narrative authoring, subconscious scripts, and our identity associations play when shaping our internal state, and particularly how we form and filter our identity associations based on these past prior cues, past prior predictions, and largely what we're culturally and socially conditioned to perceive. As we look at that perspective today, you often frame these dynamics through the role of self-victimization. To begin today, could you share briefly your background and how this inspired your curiosity in exploring these complex interactions?
Thank you for that. My background is I'm a primary school teacher with a PhD in communication. And how I discovered and became interested in beliefs, values, in victim game, and how all this world around us function is my personal experience. First, as you already mentioned, during my PhD, I experienced a sudden infant death of my firstborn baby, and everything I knew, everything I learned, everything I believed was true fell apart. So that traumatic event pushed me to find a new theories, new explanation, something that will show me and explain me why things happen like it happens. So that was beginning of my journey in a different direction. I was into mainstream science, but when I experienced unexplainable event, that is death of newborn, and later giving birth to a disabled daughter with a KCNQ2 genetic mutation, that I didn't find answer in the mainstream science. What should happen that neither me nor my husband were carrier of that mutation? What should happen that she developed de novo in uterus that kind of condition? And by the way, she's 12 now. She's a very happy girl. But she's like a baby captured in a 12-year-old, almost teenager girl. So she's in a wheelchair. She has a severe developmental delay in diapers and completely dependent upon caregivers, upon me and my husband. So that was my path, and that shaped my work, what I do today. And PhD in communication helped me with research, analyze, to synthesize, and to make a conclusion, and to test if something works or something doesn't work. And because I was literally in ninth circle of hell, it felt very, very exhausting, like I was fight, flight, freeze mode for 9 months and longer. And I needed something that works. So I tested numerous healing modalities, theoretical approaches. I went into visualization and all that self-development modalities. And I discovered something that worked, that actually gave me a relief that I wanted. And one technique that created the biggest change in my internal, somatically, in my somatic state, was self-directed compassion. And that was the beginning of easier and easier life. And by the way, the peak intensity was about in 2015-16. And in 2016, I discovered self-directed compassion, and 17, 18, 19. And by today, I can say that I'm happy and peaceful inside of me. And that peace is reflected back to me in my outer reality. What is the most important for me? My girl, my baby, she was agitated. Her nervous system was so intense. She knew to cry for hours. And now she's happy. She smiles. We travel with her. We go to concerts. So I can say that we live a happy life, fulfilled, and relationship with my husband, with my son, with my parents, with his parents. Everything became gradually, it's not like overnight. It became better and better and better, and every day is better and better. So that was my journey.
Tena, first I want to hold some space here and pause for a moment and thank you for so vulnerably sharing that sense of grief and loss and challenge with both of your children, and particularly when holding that heartfelt loss of a child. I can only imagine the impact that's had on you. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for holding that sacred space. And I feel very safe with you. And you have such an uplifting, happy energy. And it's so okay and natural for me to speak with you about that topic that can be very heavy, that are heavy and challenging.
Thank you for setting that tone for us today. As you reflect, how do you relate to how that's influenced how you view your interaction with your clients now, holding that space and framing those identity structures for them?
That helped me a lot. And I believe that my experience, I believe that every one of us has a life path, that we choose what we want to explore, what we want to learn. And I wasn't aware that my path will be in a healing journey, working with people. I had total different perception of how my life would go, but I experienced that, and that helped me to know how client feels. If someone experienced loss, because I went through my loss consciously, because doctors wanted to give me a pill, to calm me down. And I remember words of my grandmother who lost her grown-up daughter from cancer, my aunt, and she said, I don't want pill, I want to cry out my daughter. And that conscious experience helped me to help clients, because I know how it feels to be in ninth circle of hell, completely hopeless, completely powerless. And I know how it feels. So I can recognize that tone, that, sense, taste of, and I can guide you, hold space for my clients who are also experiencing that kind of emotional intensity.
I think that's such an essential, grounded element for us to share today, is that urge we sometimes get, to fix things. We just had some recent discussions on how we become serial fixers in a lot of ways to manage that discomfort of our emotions to begin with. Looking at how culturally we can be very prescriptive sometimes and just, here, let me write you a solution to this and move on, rather than holding that grounded space to honor those feelings as they come up, to honor those nuanced states, and simply tune in. So often we want to move beyond that discomfort, and that's where some of that disconnect can start to form.
Yes, I can say that if I didn't experience, if I don't know how it feels to lose someone who you love, I can know it, I can theoretically learn about that. I cannot feel it, I cannot sense you if you lost someone. It's not about theoretically. I can theoretically tell you, do this, but if I don't know how it feels, I wasn't in your shoes. How can I help you if I were not in your shoes or in similar shoes? Because feeling is healing. That's what I learned through my path. I feel it and let it go. And I also learned the layers, why we don't want to feel, why we numb ourselves. And with the self-directed compassion, there is a process to go beyond that numbness. We say, I'm so sorry you're numb. I'm so sorry it's not safe to feel, giving compassion to a wounded part of us, to a wounded child or soul, piece of soul who is wounded. So by giving that compassion, we are opening space. Okay, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel. Now you're safe. Now you can feel. I'm here for you. Yeah, and the feeling is healing, because if we do not process, if we do not feel that when we experience trauma, what happens? The protection is like a bubble is creating around that emotion, that talk, that unpleasant emotion that protect us and help us to survive, particularly when we were a child. When we were children, it is very important to survive. And if our parents are fighting, we don't see it. We can't tell it's not about us, because it's survival mechanism, and that mechanism protects us. So that's why we are numbing ourselves. We are denying the truth. We are believing lies when we are children. Let's say mom and dad are fighting, and I ask my mom, what's happening? Nothing. And I saw that something happened, but I will rather believe my mom. Nothing happens, because I want to survive. I want to survive. And that survival mechanism, and it's wonderful and it's amazing. And that helps us to grow up and to be in this world. It's like a mimicry in biology. I see that like that.
Those interactions are such a beautiful blending of states within us. Our internal states, our internal dynamics play out in such a mind-boggling often way. So when we work with clients, our team often finds it's especially helpful to begin this integrative work, reintegrating our experiences. We're reintegrating our states. We're taking all of the missing pieces and data and creating that new picture. often addressing the lens of conditional predictive priors. We're taking our past experiences, and once again, what are we doing? We're trying to fill in the gaps. We're trying to predict the future. We're trying to predict what's missing in our assumptions. We're trying to forecast what others are doing. We're trying to predict the meaning our parents had in that experience or what their intention was. Often can be very filtered, convoluted, sometimes because we simply are missing that data and filling in the confabulated pieces. So as we look at that, I find it very valuable how that illustrates the role of processes like affective forecasting or conditional beliefs and neurally imprinted subconscious scripts, or those stories we all hold on to about things. So to begin our talk today, Tena, early attachment injuries shape the internal roles many adults subconsciously adapt and what we tend to conform to as our default pattern a lot of times. So we look at things such as overfunctioning, self-critique, and the silent caregiver. Tena, could you share your perspective on how these roles influence our sense of identity?
Well, these roles influence our identity in the way that replace our authenticity. So in order to survive, to be accepted, to be loved, to be valued, we create identities. And internal roles replace our true self, our authentic, beautiful, divine self with adaptation. We need an ego structure because it's like a mask for diving. Let's say that this 3D physical world is like a sea. And we need a diving mask to navigate underwater, and the ego is like a diving mask, but for this physical reality. We need that to live in this physical 3D world we are living. And there is a healthy, authentic ego structure, divine child, nurturing parent, and wise adult. And because the world is like it is, we developed that turned into negative ego. We developed shadow forms, hurtful, helpless, helpful child, critical parent, and a little professor. And attachment injury, if our mother didn't respond in infancy stage to our basic needs for warmth, for food, or when we cried. And, in 70s and 80s, particularly in Croatia, in Europe, it was let your child cry out. Of course, child needs to be held, to be loved. And by not responding to an infancy needs, we need to adapt. We developed that attachment injury. And that was the start of identity creation. And why we created that identity protector on any other identity? Because we want to prevent loss. So the key to all identity formation is to prevent loss rather than express who we are. It was not safe to express who we are, so we developed identities. So that's reason. And when the wounds heals, when we heal that wound, that attachment injuries from early infancy stage, from toddler stage, from preschoolers and adolescent stage, we shift, our identity shifts from who keeps me safe to who am I when I no longer have to protect myself. So injuries. When we were hurt, our needs were not met because our parents didn't know to meet our needs, because their parents didn't know to meet their needs. We learned that being authentic, being myself is risky. So the nervous system learns to perform safety instead of experience safety. Okay. And that's the genesis of role. And each role is a strategy to stay safe and connected, basically to survive. That's the reason why we form those roles. Overfunctioner, I stay valuable if I do more. That's identity of overfunctioner, or self-critique. It's better that I critique myself than others. I stay safe by correcting myself before others do. and why we save everyone, that care about everyone else instead of ourselves, because I stay loved by not needing anything. They will love me if if I don't disturb them, if I meet their needs. It's all twisted. That stuff is all twisted, yeah.
I find it interesting to look at that role of pre-verbal communication, first and foremost, between an infant and a mother. Before we have the conceptual ability, the developmental ability to even realize or understand what care and safety is. We're starting to first record the auditory sensations. We're getting imprinted messages about what that state is, if it's safety or threat, whatever the preconditional priors are of the parent, how they perceive that, how they unconsciously experience it. And that's being reflected. It's being reflected in their ability to hold capacity, their ability to assess the load, how stressed they are, and how coherent they are, or how expansively they can hold those concepts together, those states together, and interact with them. It's all preconditioned states that start to set the tone of how we parent first and foremost, what we learned from our parental past, what we learned culturally, societally, even in how we form the language to express that. We all start to reflect. I'm subconsciously saying imposed, which kind of also triggers some of my subconscious scripts. Well, is it imposed or are we reflecting it? What is the nuance of that? When we impose something, we're doing it with intention. Looking at the curiosity of just holding our words loosely and not being so concrete sometimes in how we frame them reinforces how we experience our conditional priors. What comes up? Well, okay, whenever that feeling comes up or that state, which is a very nuanced interaction throughout our body, starts to occur, where do we automatically go with that story? Is it one of safety and survival? If we're in a harsh environment, if we're in a disconnected or disengaged environment, it can feel very much like a threat. We can reinforce that idea, or sometimes we can shift that nuance. Looking at that and just kind of reflecting today here with you, you spoke about that shift from fear-based living to love-based, rooted in capacity and self-directed compassion. What does this transition look like somatically first? How do we rise that in our body, become aware of it and attune to it? And how does that body signal readiness for that change or that transition specifically?
First, I want to share something what I learned about states. You know that states cannot last longer than 90 seconds.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's
so
a long
impressed.
window.
But only 90 seconds. But there is question, why am I feel, let's say, sad or overwhelmed or depressed more than 90 seconds? And what I learned from my head, from my experience, because I'm looping old stories. Looping stories are keeping me in that unwanted states. And why am I looping that stories? Because when I'm in that states, I remember all stories that happened when I was in that state. And it is so interesting to experience and to observe how when we are, let's say, in depressed state, we see everything black. And when we are in happy state, the same thing, we see, okay, no problem, that's cool, The same thing, different state, different perception. Wow, isn't that fascinating? And so how to shift somatically from that state to a positive state. Okay. So I believe that first thing and first step is awareness. This is what we are doing now. We are talking about that. We are raising awareness that it doesn't have to be like it was before, that we are not our stories. We are not our states. The awareness is first thing. And when we are stressed, we feel it in our stomach, in our heart, in legs, in the whole body. Here is how I shift from unwanted state to positive state. First, I learned there is no need to force anything. And by the way, forcing will just make it bigger. And when I face a problem, let's say problem looks, I had an issue with my platforms, and it looked like a giant mountain. And there is a question, okay, what is everything that this problem is not? Okay, it's not chair, it's not closet, it's not my shirt, and just shift the perception. And I experience something shifting in me. This is the first stuff I can do with to shift my state. And the second stuff is simply breathing. Take a deep breath and breathe out and feel that. I give myself compassion, and that simply dissolves after certain time. So instead of performing, forcing, wanting to change, I need to change this presence. Be presence, observe, and awareness, have awareness about that, and that will, like fog raises up, it will dissolve. And trust. I believe trust is very, very important. From self-monitoring, you don't do you did that, all that critical monitoring, trusting everything is working in your favor, and reminding myself I came here to learn those lessons and to feel that and to let it go. And remember and anchor in the core authentic self and worth. We are worthy because we exist. That awareness creates somatic shift as well. Tuning into what triggered you, feeling that, giving compassion, or simply feeling that, breathing through it, and letting go. And when the sensation, that trigger shifts, and when you think about things that trigger you at the first time, and now you're neutral, then you know that you shifted. You know that you exit the victim game and that you are who you are. You are powerful. You're not powerless, like the core belief of a victim game. And that's how, in my case, shift my own states. Yeah.
So I feel like it's such a nuanced recognition to first kind of reflect back earlier in our conversation, how we witness those states, to just pause and attune, to vulnerably be aware, ground in and hold that space. They are loops, and those loops can happen as quick as a few measurable milliseconds or quicker, beyond our awareness, how quick, if we're even attuned to them fully, comes into play. Good many of those processes are forever unconscious and offline beyond our awareness themselves as a state. But what we see is the predictive result. What do I forecast has occurred as a result of X, Y, and Z that the predictive prior wasn't even a present awareness? Not to beat ourselves up over about that was itself sometimes a challenge, because we are feeling a little inadequate maybe about things we don't have the inherent ability to attune to first. So I'm going to throw that out there in frame. As we consider that, we can see where we start to unravel that a little bit and want to shift as we feel that dissonance or discomfort, and somewhat check out, numb, or dissociate, to move away from what we've labeled and termed as this discomfort, this challenge, this survival, this threat, and try to move out of that state rather than being present with it, rather than acknowledging that sensation, that response that's answering that need for call and response. We're partnering with those. How do you feel? We first allow that gentle compassion and that grace to just hold that space and honor it.
Being embodied, being in body is very important, because what happens when we experience trauma in early childhood? I worked with clients and abuse, also sexual abuse and other abuses, went out of body. It's like watching the movie, because it's amazing defense mechanism. It's amazing survival mechanism, because if sometimes people can stay in body, but children, it's very, very, very shocking and very hard and intensive, and it will be nervous breakdown. Because it's so intense, nervous system has to shut simply to survive. And that's why people, why doctors offered me a pill. It was shock, finding a hold. Baby, in my arms, didn't breathe. He didn't breathe.
Yeah.
And it was shock. You can't think. You're completely shocked. It's overwhelming emotion. But my grandmother said, so I went consciously through that shock, and it was like falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I allowed myself to fall apart. I just relaxed. I surrendered. The good word is surrendered. I surrendered to that. And I went through consciously. And it's very important to be in the body. But when it's early childhood, we cannot be in our bodies. And in order to heal, it's important to gradually embody ourselves, to allow ourselves to come into body. And by the way, in spiritual, because I'm also went through spiritual acceleration, it's a technique that connects interdimensional, that spiritual realms. And from spiritual perspective, when abuse happens, the soul come out of body. And many people are not connected, are disconnected from their essence, from their soul, of course, because of trauma, because it was not safe to be in body. And you can see in the spiritual communities, there are fractions that it's deny body. Body is not spiritual. Let's say it's okay to be in higher realms, but perceive body as something lower, something that needs to be transcended, transmuted, or whatever. But the true ascension, evolution, is to be in your body, and allow yourself to feel, to process all that stuff. But we didn't learn that. In our childhood, no one taught us how to deal with emotional states, with emotions. We shut off, go to your room.
Yeah.
Okay, something is wrong with me. That's a conclusion. That's a belief I anchor in myself, and the value is something is wrong with me. And until adulthood, something is wrong with me value program is looping. And I'm in my head, and particularly in scientific communities and all those business communities, people are in heads, not in bodies, because I will think, overthink, just not to feel. It's something is scary.
I'm going to pause a moment on that. Do you think, first and foremost, we flatten that, again, as a defensive or coping mechanism, adaptive mechanism a lot of times? Hold that thought. It's a thought. It's a neural imprint. It's a body response. Now you're going somatically. It's not just a thought. You're reconnecting to the experience if we hold it. We're reconnecting with why we start to form that narrative.
That's
why do we rush to answer rather than pausing for a second and holding maybe what unconsciously is discomforting? Why do we rush forward to predict? Why do we start to go back and now we segregate the brain or marginalize and stigmatize it? We're already starting to loosen that compassion. There's a process under there that's starting to unravel it and say, where do I want or need to move with this? And what can I pause and hold?
You know what I noticed? That was my case totally.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, I don't know how many years ago.
Yes.
I had to sing in front of audience. And I didn't have capacity to listen how other people sing, because I was, I have to think, it will be my turn. Yes. That was first thing I noticed. And the second thing, particularly in 15 or I don't know, when I started to giving lectures on integral theory, Ken Wilber's, integral theory, I gave a lecture. And I felt if someone will ask question, I felt like attacked. It was like a sense of attack, and I have to respond. I have to go. I have to defend myself.
Yes.
And I want to share just the story that taught me what is important. I wanted to put the whole integral theory in 20 minutes. States. Lines, everything. And
we do that all the time. We try to wrap up the entire complex nature of our being in little bullet points. We try to make it simple. We try to neglect that nuance, the ambiguity, the uncertainty, the complexity.
And you know what happened? I gave a lecture, I prepared great. In 20 minutes, I talk about lines, levels, all of that stuff. And later I asked, do you have some questions? No one asked questions. Everyone was silent. And my dad said, my dad was attending my lecture, and my dad said, you know what? I didn't understand nothing. He said that in front of everyone. Okay, so, wow. And I paused and I said, wow, thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. So what I learned, and I said, wow, that's so good that you said to that. And I realized back then, I wasn't listening to audience.
Yes.
I was into my head. I was into that internal theory. I have to, but wait a minute. Check people. Do they understand? What is your audience? Integral theory in 20 minutes. Are you nuts? Maybe one segment to present, to be familiar. But, I was in my head. I wanted because of me. I didn't know that. Back then, I didn't know what is important to establish connection. It's not about me, talking. That's performing. That's that in identity, performing identity. And I learned my lessons, hopefully.
If I may, I'm going to ask you a very simple question here. Can we hold some space together and reflect on a few things? Yes. So looking at that first, holding that notion of performative in our identities, in a sense, we're performing all of the actions, all of the states, all of the ways we express that. And I'm having trouble performing words today, and I can hold that and say with nuance, well, it was just a slight hiccup and stumble. Let's go back and re-express it. So how we frame that, to me, is essentially important. Do we neglect the idea, or do we hold that lightly with grace and say, well, all of our actions are essentially performed? That's, to me, kind of a foundational. I'm moving into a fixer mode here, which again is one way we start to instantly, while I'm saying, let's hold this space, I'm trying to usher you out of that space by explaining it away. I'm starting to try to fix it for you rather than holding that space. So drawing back, I'm going to go back to my original statement. Can we hold this space for a second? Now, reflecting back on our conversation, as you were describing both that experience with presenting your presentation and the experience with both of your children, you mentioned how we sometimes start to fall apart as we experience that. Hold that for a moment. Reflect back for a moment. Feel into your body and breathe for a moment. Now, as you attune to that, if I may ask, what comes up for you right now?
Nothing.
Nothing? Nothing. Okay, so that's great.
Like,
what comes up sometimes? Do we rush to create something? I want to ask a question here. Looking at that idea of falling apart, can you see, or how would you perceive from your experience you're relating to that falling apart? Do you see that as maybe moving into some of those roles? I'm being a little suggestive here to try to, again, bridge where we genuinely connect with and where we start to move some of those assumptions. How would you perceive that falling apart? What comes up as far as your identity, what roles you were supposed to play, what responsibilities you might have had either as a parent or as someone presenting content to help others?
Well, I am in my body and falling apart. You ask about falling apart. I experienced falling apart 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. Like out of nothing, I felt in me outburst of cry. My tears went out, and I was asking, what's happening? What's happening? And by the way, that was activated or initiated by your question. And when I started to work through that questions, and next day I experienced cry and like falling apart, like I'm losing my ground. I don't know where I am, who I am. Something very weird. And later I discovered, your identity. And by the way, this protector performer identity, I realized when I applied to your show, and that identity rise, I became aware of that, how I perform, how I protect myself. And it was like a month. I think around a month passed. And maybe it's a final dissolution of identity. Maybe it's not. But 2 days ago, while thinking about your questions, I felt like I was falling apart and realized, obviously, the old protective performer identity is falling apart. And when there is nothing to lose and nothing to prove because you lost everything, what's left? You're dancing with yourself, nothing and everything, just spaciousness, and everything is okay. The realization, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fall apart. That's just a part of the process. Like before butterfly, there is a caterpillar. Like caterpillar, it's falling apart and everything is dissolving and out of somewhere. Wow. Flying. It's a butterfly. Yeah. It's not caterpillar anymore.
That falling apart to me, first and foremost, thank you for sharing that honest reflection and vulnerably holding that part of you and allowing it to acknowledge that falling apart, to acknowledge what comes up, to acknowledge the true impact that had on you. So thank you for that, Tena.
Thank you for posting questions, contributing to my own evolution.
Well, thank you likewise, because that's a two-way interaction, and I'm having those same experiences with you. As we reflect, I'm relating to areas in my own work, literally inside of me, my own work, my own reintegration and healing, and saying, here are just simply spaces where we hold those parts of us, those roles, those identities, how I show up as a guest, how I show up as a friend between two individuals who have formed a loving bond. You and I, how we connect and relate in that friendship, in that space, in that container. And again, going back and holding them with that compassion, that empathy and vulnerability, to realize that sometimes we do fall out of touch with those parts. We sometimes fragment and, dare I say, break, and break doesn't necessarily mean that inherently it's broken, although we can sometimes feel a little raw and broken. And can we hold and honor that part of the puzzle, or that part of how we perceive it? So framing that, just kind of guiding a little bit today, again, which is sometimes we're maybe challenging and nudging each other a little bit. Maybe we're just kind of bumping up and seeing where that relationship meets and holding that space to kind of compare and contrast. Holding that nuance with vulnerability, openness, sometimes acceptance, sometimes reluctance even, where we want to withdraw into that part. So reflecting on that as you start to feel some of those discomforts, whether it's in reflecting back on your experience with your children, whether it's in holding what comes up in those relationships, whether it's what comes up with the relationship with your father. Pause and hold that for a moment.
Yeah, it came now. So when all those protective identities dissolve, who is left? You, I. And I know I'm not, it's awareness that I'm not my story. I'm not my trauma. I'm not my disabled daughter. I'm not, mother of all those roles. And who am I?
Yeah.
All that is, that part. And when I speak from that part of who am I out of these roles, I can openly share my wounds, what I went through, because I have that knowledge and remembrance that I am not wounded. And I see you and all people not wounded. The core is not wounded. And what I was doing through all those years, and it's a process, probably, I don't know until when, the layer is just peeling, all those false protective identities peeling like an orange. And what is left, it's a juicy, beautiful fruit, so something amazing. And that's who we are, something amazing, beyond words, beyond comprehension, beyond stories, beyond description, that. Yeah, that. And that joy, soft joy, it's different. There is I need to feel excitement, but that kind of excitement is exhausting. And later I found out it's anxiety disguised,
Yes.
And how that authentic joy feels, it's soft, it's gentle, it's relaxing, it's expansive. And that's what is left when we peel off our identities, performer protective identities. And that's something what is wonderful.
As you hold that part, that mother, Tena, in that moment with the child, with either the oldest infant or your daughter, what does that mother need in the moment?
That mother has everything what she needs nothing. This moment, me speaking with you, sharing the space, smile, that's in this moment, that's what this mother needs, in this moment.
Yes.
In other moment, will be something else. But in this moment is full of life, full of joy, and needs nothing. It's happy. She's happy.
It's great to see that joy rise up. It's great to hold that, and it's great to compare that with the two experiences.
Yeah.
To see where we are presently. So we've kind of ventured into a very deep, intimate, connected exchange here today. Let's maybe peel that back a little bit and go back a little bit to more of our structure.
Okay.
Maybe connect some dots here. So
yeah,
I'm going to venture back into that route. Not that necessarily we're rejecting or throwing one to the side, but we are in a sense. We're kind of going out of that very intimate frame and back into kind of a structured frame again. We're going back into some of those assumptions. We're going back into kind of, well, where did we kind of establish an intention with this today? So I'm just going to hold those both vulnerably here and transition back to a question if I can.
Yeah, let's do that.
So thank you for sharing that personal space, because that was such a beautiful space to just simply hold and ground and really, truly try to witness your experience, because that's where that spark of true, quote unquote, attuned connection lives. When we take our assumptions out of the way a little bit, maybe step back from our own personal identities, our own personal experiences, and just hold in honor your experience, Tena. So thank you for that again. And I'm going to go back to now my questioning. So many people operate from that internalized assumption or conditional prior and label it as villain or experience it as villain, or similarly, through that lens of self-blame and that narrative of our trauma. I'm going to hold those spaces and kind of pause a moment to allow anyone that might connect with it to reflect. To the question, what mechanisms, from your perspective, Tena, create this narrative or contribute to this narrative? And how does compassion recalibrate it without collapsing it into self-absolutism, again, where we have a very narrow, siloed, concrete identity of self? And how can we allow that conscious, vulnerable, attuned space to let whatever persona or sub-persona come to the front and acknowledge what it truly needs?
Yeah, regarding that villain part, that was question, right? Internalized villain. What creates that internalized villain? Self-blame narratives. It's trauma. Trauma interrupts coherence. When you're coherent, you feel aligned. You feel easy in your body, okay? And trauma interrupts that, like you're whacked. And what happens with self? The self restores that coherence because the self wants to be coherent again, and trauma interrupted it. And the self restored coherence through self-blame. And here is where villain comes. When something painful happens, especially in childhood, the mind craves explanation. And if no safe adult, conscious adult, offers explanation, the child defaults to, it must be because of me, because this restores a sense of control. Okay? It's like, if I cause it, then I can prevent it. If I was bad, I can be better. If I take the blame, the world remains predictable. The illusion of agency is safer than randomness or helplessness. Okay, that's when villain, why all that, why we create that. And in early childhood, we are social being and we need attachment, bond. We need bond. And bond, attachment takes precedence over truth. Okay? Because children need caregivers more than they need justice. So if the caregiver is abusive, is neglect or inconsistent, the child often, of course, unconsciously, it all happens unconsciously. The child decides, they can be bad, so I must be. This protects the bond, even at the cost of internal integrity. And in adult age, this persists like justifying mistreatment. He beats me, but he loves me, all that stuff. And we over-identify with shame. That's what I experienced 2 days ago when all that outburst went out. I experienced shame. I wasn't aware. Why? Nothing externally happened. But while I was working on that performer protector identity, on your questions, shame popped up. Okay, so, what's that? Because that identity was dissolving and it's not yet stabilized and integrated. But maybe it's time now to stabilize and integrate. Because when we are to survive, we need power, like electricity to house to be light up. It needs like electricity, and survival requires power, right? And after the trauma, especially if the body froze or couldn't respond, the system often exiles the memory of powerlessness, because the worst possible outcome is becoming totally powerless. If you don't have power, you cannot breathe, you're dead. Basically, you don't have power, you are you're dead. And the nervous system, exiles the memory of powerlessness and replace it with a story of, I let it keep, I comply, it happened because of me. I should have done something because I have power. It's because of me. No. And this narrative is brutal, but it's less terrifying than facing how vulnerable we truly are. And from that moment, that villain self-critique and all that villain, what is part of the villain role happens. And what is the most damaging stuff in that? Okay, it's not the most damaging. Everything is healable, resolvable. There is solution for everything, every problem, because if there is no problem, there will be no solution. Okay, solution requires problem. It's like two different sides of the same coin, problem solution. But it can be challenging when shame becomes identity. And because we are repeatedly blaming ourselves and we are shaming, and when parents said, okay, shame on you, look how you look, go into your room, that's shame. And when shame becomes identity, repeated self-blame becomes a character, self-critic, saboteur. So this identity structure becomes fused with safety. If I keep punishing myself, I'll stay in control. So many people, extreme, they're cutting themselves, and it's all about control. So, yeah.
So
everything
I about stepped on you there, and I apologize.
No, just that's okay.
I'm rushing ahead.
I think I talk too much.
No, say okay. Let's hold that. Let's honor that.
Yeah. Okay.
As you were tuning into that, you were truly feeling into what needed to express. There again, I'm implying that, and rather than holding a space, as you tune into that, feeling like you talk too much.
Yeah. I was expressing what I was talking about. Isn't that amazing?
Just hold it and honor it. What happens when we just hold it and honor it? I know that can be an uncomfortable space for me as I'm waiting for that pause, and I'm still right now feeling a lump in my throat because I'm realizing what I was doing. I'm not blaming myself for what I'm doing. I'm just honoring where those patterns start to naturally arise for us all, where it naturally starts to arise for me. I'm wanting to very graciously and very lovingly hold that space for you. Yet in the back, there's other loops going. Okay, let's move on here. I also want to try to move into that model. I'm also starting to unconsciously fix for you what you're feeling. Oh, I feel so much empathy and compassion, yet I'm uncomfortable in one hand with that. Let's hold it in one hand, that empathy and compassion, because I also, on the other hand, feel that hurt unconsciously, that grief unconsciously, and I'm uncomfortable with that also, and would like to try to powerfully move you beyond that rather than honoring that space with you, rather than to truly connect, which sometimes moves us prematurely in and out of the cycles rather than genuinely holding it together and grounding into it. Sometimes creates that rupture repair. If I try to move you prematurely before you're ready and attuned, we start to narrow that empathy gap to where we aren't holding that grounded space. And sometimes that brings up various patterns, various states, various conditional priors. Sometimes that itself can activate somebody and they shut down and withdraw because now you're not honoring my space consciously, and it starts to bubble up. And it's just, again, thank you for sharing that space. Let's honor it. Let's try to reconnect. Sometimes it's also that space where we move into the apology that I'm sorry if I prematurely stepped on what you had to say, maybe marginalized that, disconnected, or even diminished it. So thank you for that grace in my own faux pas.
And thank you for sharing that, because how I see that situation that just emerged exactly, it emerged like it should be, without that, we wouldn't have that continuation of our conversation. And what we were talking about, we actually experienced.
Yes.
I experienced, okay, maybe I talk too much, the pattern of, I'm not good enough or whatever, that pattern, you experienced your pattern, and it's such an amazing situation to observe. And now we come to compassion. How can compassion recalibrate this narrative without collapsing?
If I may honor that space again with you and ask a question, without moving immediately into labeling the role or the part that was playing, simply identifying which part of your parental self, your core self, was speaking in that moment. Would you relate that more to Tena now in the present, or was there a part of the child Tena somewhere in that arc?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly, yes.
So hold that part or role of Tena. Who or what steps in? Not labeled, but is it the child part of Tena that might be fragmented and broken off and compartmentalized that falls apart? And how do we relate to those parts? So relating that, do you feel that was child Tena stepping in,
yes,
or is that Tena's voice now?
It's child Tena. She's never good enough. She always had to please, to perform, to do well in school and enroll in PhD and all of that stuff, just to please her father. Yeah, but she was never enough. And that little girl is still here, and she can be, she's honored and she's allowed to be present and to express whatever she needs to express, and she's completely okay. And actually, I see her contributing to this conversation because we are talking about performer protective identity. And she was the holder of this performer protective identity. And that identity is disintegrating now. Like, I can't say it's falling apart. Maybe what will be the best word? It's dissolving. So now what I see, what's presenting in my space through these months and particularly lately, how this old identity is dissolving and new authentic identity rebuilds, rebuilds after role-based living. The role dissolves, but the self doesn't yet appear, and it feels like a loss. It feels like a loss. And feeling, and what I can sense, beginning to feel worth without performance, and it's okay. And it's okay. And new patterns form, from preference, not from fear like before. And what I can see like this, what happened now, is echoes of an old identities that simply rise to show us what was and what can be. It just came through me now. Yeah.
I'm going to pause for a moment with you and let you hold that for a moment and hold it with you, if I may stand beside you in this moment. And just honor it. Just witness it for a moment. How does it feel in this moment for you to tune in and just take a deep breath?
peace.
So in this moment, if I might ask you again, one simple question. If that child part of Tena is allowed that same grace in this moment to just breathe, feel valid, feel worthy, what does it need in this moment?
She wants to laugh and, express joy. She's happy. She's happy. She's very, very happy.
Is there
feeling alive.
a part of that child that also needs recognized and heard?
She says, "Oh, let's play. Let's play. Let's do something."
That's fantastic. She needs to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that space and just acknowledging that. As you hold that space again, what comes up for you now as Tena in this moment?
What will we do next? Creation. Let's create something. Let's go create something.
It's okay to acknowledge that she needed that happiness in the moment. She needs the happiness now. It's okay to hold it. We also acknowledged where some of those fragmented parts might have been in the moment, what they might have been in now, where they might be in the future. And just, again, what happens when we hold that space to honor and connect, to breathe and feel, to truly tune in what's coming up now. We're not trying to fix a past. We're not trying to predict the future.
Something is releasing deep.
Even that's what I'm observing. From what I would, you're verifying that. It's releasing. Your body posture just shifted. And if I'm being open to your body posture, I can observe it, as that shift happens, rather than me saying, well, she's releasing. You verified what's happening for you.
Yeah.
Thank you for allowing that grace for me to witness that space and hold it with you.
By the way, when I release, I yawn.
Yeah.
I know to cough.
Yeah. You can acknowledge that in yourself. It's very much a body posture. You're kind of letting that bracing down. From my perspective, if I were to hear what I feel you're saying, and relate that to my experience, we're letting some of that guard down and our body is kind of loosening up. And that's what happens when we move into our sleep state. Our body is allowing itself the grace, if we don't fight it, if we don't try to resist it, to move into that space of more expansiveness, that space of letting its guard down.
Yeah, somatic signs live.
I think today we had established that we were going to walk me through that, yet somehow we reversed that role and shared it. So,
okay.
Thank you for vulnerably allowing me to just kind of go with it today. And maybe subjectively in the back of my mind, if I really reflect, there was a part of me guiding. Sometimes there was that part that was trying to overfix and correct. I have to acknowledge that. And sometimes for me, that's hard to hold that space.
I love to receive, So I said to myself, I want to receive, I open myself to receive from everyone, from everything I need in particular moments. So thank you for receiving from you. So Yeah.
And thank you for that being a two-way street today, Tena, because truly, I feel like we had that expansive space to first hold that trust together, to attune to it, to allow each other to vulnerably show up. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So as we kind of wrap up again here today, we've had several very deep connecting conversations. I'm going to frame things up a little bit here and wrap up if I can.
Yes,
So,
please.
when healing begins to emerge as a felt return to our embodied coherence, as we tune in and witness our posture, our internal states, what comes up like we just did, as we witnessed your cues and how you tend to experience that in the moment. Our internal states often signal that shift long before the mind. Again, we think the mind is naming something. Maybe the mind is naming a prior. Maybe it's identifying with a part. Maybe it's identifying with some of those conditional loops, or maybe it's truly tuning in. So keeping that set up broad where it is. If we think of healing as reintegration of that fragmented internal state or states, what are the easiest somatic cues or predictive priors, the little nuggets that we can identify with and shift? So we move from that dissociation or that dissonance where we're disconnecting and more into relational presence, both with ourselves and as we attune with the body cues of others, and not trying to move too quick from that release again as I witness and you kind of validate for me what your natural cue is with the release.
Yeah. That's it.
It's just simply relaxing into the body, simply relaxing into our states, simply being present with it. So if you were to offer a tip or advice from your experience of how we might move into those phases, what would that be today for cleansing?
Well, I believe that you witnessed that, how I switched my states. In my case, I yawn, and my somatic experience was maybe eyes. I have a tear in my eyes. I'm not sure it is if it is shown, but I feel something here, and there is still releasing. I'm still releasing something, whatever it is, doesn't matter. When we went to that direction, I relaxed and allowed to receive whatever needs to receive. There was a part of me that wanted to stop the process, but I simply said, no, allow yourself to. I didn't say it, I experienced it.
Yes.
Now I'm just analyzing that. Receive that, relax. You're in a safe place. Relax. You can relax. It is safe to relax. It is safe to receive. And my body showed how I relaxed, and I'm still relaxing. I'm still processing. When I process, I yawn, and I felt it in my belly. I felt energy going through my head, actually above my head, eyes, throat, and in belly. And I felt a little tension in belly, and it, with another breath, it released. So what I can suggest, if you are in a safe space with a practitioner, or maybe with yourself, allow yourself to feel, to experience whatever needs to emerge. And when you notice a part of you like stopping, blocking, protecting, shrinking, take a deep breath and breathe through it, like I did now. Honoring your process and feeling safe in your process, in a safe space with you or with some other person, or maybe in a group, or maybe with yourself. Allow to emerge, to release whatever needs to be released. Allowing, opening and allowing that. Knowing you are safe now. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to perform. You don't have to pretend that you're strong, that you're the smartest, the greatest, It's done. You are valuable because you are a part of all that is. You're God's child. You're a divine child. And what you experience, it's a natural process of identity shift, identity dissolution. It's safe to be you. And by being you, you are the most powerful being. Not your performing identities, because your authentic heart, authentic self is power source. Just allow to be. Wow, it's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing that nugget of wisdom and insight in that very sacred, grounded space with us today. I truly, truly appreciate where we've went with this today and how we've been able to just connect and allow it to evolve together.
And showcase, we showed a real life experience, what the somatic cues are, a little bit of theoretical approach, what it means, why it happens.
Yes.
It's natural, it's normal, it's just a process. It's not a big deal, it's a process, yeah. A little bit of tears, a little bit of yawning. Why not? And at the end, you feel great.
Why not? That is our question to ponder, and with a very grounded, observational, witnessing. Why not? And even if that little bit of dissonance and possibly guilt and shame start to rise up, honoring the why and maybe not so much the not. Sometimes just honoring the space in the moment again. So thank you for honoring that space with us today, Tena. I truly, truly value and appreciate you.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you to your people, your audience.
Thank you. We're truly, truly grateful for you. Namaste, the light in me acknowledges the light in you through and through.
Namaste. Namaste.
Come back and join us again soon. This was such a great conversation. In this episode, Tena shared a thoughtfully grounded, embodied conversation on healing identity and what it means to come back to ourselves after grief and trauma. Together, we explored how early attachment injuries and loss shape protective identity roles that help us cope but disconnect us from core self. We witnessed how healing happens through embodied compassion and somatic awareness that lets emotions surface and reintegrate within their natural pacing and timelines. And we revisited how all human behavior is inherently performative action, yet overperformance often arises when the nervous system manages dissonance and threat. What emerged between Tena and I was a shared moment of reintegration, where presence replaced performance and compassion created space for coherence, joy, and genuine connection. Drop us a note sharing how this episode landed for you. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with a friend, loved one, or fellow practitioner. And as always, we're grateful for you, our valued listening community of therapeutic professionals. This has been The Light Inside. I'm Jeffrey Biesecker.